as you begin your journey into a restful, reigning sleep. As the sun sets over the barren desert landscape, the ancient land of Israel whispers tales of its long-forgotten past. The ground beneath your feet seems to vibrate with the echoes of countless generations that have walked this sacred earth, their footsteps lost to time. Yet, the dream of a homeland remains a dream that began thousands of years ago and has been passed down through the ages, carried by the spirit of those who believed in its promise. The journey of Israel, the dream of a people once scattered, returns in the heart of every new generation, pulling them back to this land of ancient history, conflict, get it, to wait, and hope to feel the weight of the history that surrounds you, the lives of countless individuals who have fought, loved, and dreamed in this land, their stories intertwined with yours. You are part of something vast, something that transcends time, as the story of Israel stretches back to its biblical origins. The legacy of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs who first set foot in this land, lives on in the heartbeats of every Jewish person. It's a legacy built on faith, perseverance, and an unwavering belief in a promised future. A future where the people would once again be free, living in their own land. But the path to this freedom was not an easy one. As you step deeper into this journey, you are reminded of the long exile that the Jewish people endured, scattered across the world, wandering far from the land of their ancestors. Yet, even in the darkest times, they held on to the promise of return, knowing that one day they would come back to their homeland, not as exiles, but as builders of a new world. The story of Israel begins with the longing of a people for their homeland, but it is also a story of struggle. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and setbacks, but it was also filled with the determination of those who dared to dream of a future where their people could live in peace, free from oppression. You can almost feel the weight of their dreams as they fought to create a new beginning, to restore what had been lost, as the waves of history crash against the shores of time. You witness the trials and tribulations of this people, their desire for freedom driving them to do what seemed impossible. Through the rise and fall of empires, through wars and persecutions, they never lost hope. Even in their darkest moments, they knew the promise would one day be fulfilled. Take a deep breath as you walk through the corridors of time. Feel the hope that has carried them through every hardship, every defeat, and every victory. The promise of the promised land is not just a geographical location. It is a symbol of the enduring human spirit, the drive to rise above adversity, to build something new out of the ashes of the past. The dream of Israel is not just a dream of land, but of identity, of freedom, and of belonging. This is the heart of the story, the quest to return home, and to create a future that is rooted in the past, but filled with possibility. Feel the land beneath your feet, the soil that has carried the dreams of generations. It is alive, those who have fought and sacrificed for the hope of Israel's returns. The story of Israel is your story, too, a part of the eternal journey of the human spirit. The journey that began with a dream is now unfolding before you, and you are witnessing the birth of a nation, one that would change the world forever, as the dream of Israel begins to take form. The struggle to make that dream a reality intensifies. The land that once stood as a symbol of hope now bears the weight of conflict. The Jewish people, scattered across the globe, begin to feel an undeniable pull, a call to return to their ancestral home. But this land, steeped in history, is not empty. It is a land that has been fought over, claimed by empires, and occupied by others. The tension between those who seek to return and those who call it home is palpable, and the battle for freedom begins to unfold. Feel the urgency of the moment as waves of Jewish immigrants, known as Zionists, begin to settle in the land. Their determination is unwavering, and they build communities, cultivate the land, and reclaim the soil from centuries of neglect. But with each step forward, the obstacles grow. Resistance from neighboring Arab states and local populations intensifies, and the dream of an independent Jewish state is threatened by violence and political tension. In this chapter, you witness the resilience of the Jewish people as they build, defend, and fight for their right to live in peace on their own terms. The world is watching, and the international stage is as much a battlefield as the land itself. Every step toward independence is met with the reality of geopolitical challenges. Nations, alliances, and interests shift and collide, and the fight for sovereignty is not just a physical one, but a diplomatic struggle for recognition and legitimacy. Feel the weight of the world on the shoulders of those who lead the charge. David Ben-Gurion, Chaim Weizmann, and other visionary leaders who understand that the establishment of Israel is not simply a dream, but a necessity for the survival of their people. The emotional weight of this cause is felt deeply as their hearts yearn for a homeland, a place where their children can live without the shadow of persecution. The first steps are difficult. Early settlers face harsh conditions, living in makeshift camps, battling both the terrain and the opposition from those who view their return as a threat. Yet, hope continues to fuel their efforts, and with each passing day, the foundations of a new nation are laid. The land begins to take shape, and with it, a new future for the Jewish people begins to form. But not everyone welcomes this change. The local Arab population, many of whom have lived in the land for generations, are deeply resistant to the influx of Jewish settlers. Clashes erupt, and the landscape becomes one of division and conflict, setting the stage for the coming wars. The desire for a peaceful coexistence is there, but the challenges seem insurmountable. Still, the resolve of the Jewish settlers never wavers, for they know that the land they are fighting for is not just a physical space, but the fulfillment of a dream long deferred. Feel the determination in the air rests on the shoulders of those willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to live in peace on their own land. The battle is not over, but with each day that passes, the dream grows stronger, more tangible. The struggle for freedom is far from easy, but it is a struggle worth fighting for. As you move deeper into this part of Israel's history, you sense the immense sacrifice of those who believed that their future would be forged here. Their lives are a testament to the power of vision, the strength of hope, and the unbreakable resolve to defend their right to exist. This chapter of Israel's story is one of determination and sacrifice, and it sets the stage for the creation of a new reality in the heart of the ancient land. The day arrives. The world watches, holding its breath as Israel declares its independence. The dream that has carried the Jewish people for centuries is now reality. But this moment of triumph is met with immediate resistance. The proclamation of the State of Israel in 1948 is not welcomed by all, and the conflict that has simmered beneath the surface erupts into full-scale war. Neighboring Arab states immediately mobilize, determined to prevent the establishment of a Jewish homeland. Feel the tension that crackles in the air as the young state faces overwhelming odds. The newly formed Israel is a nation built from the ground up. Its people weary from years of struggle, but their resolve unshakable. The Israeli Defense Forces IDF stand firm, though they are outnumbered and under-resourced. The fate of the new state hangs in the balance, and every moment is crucial as the very survival of the nation is threatened. The scenes are vivid and heart-wrenching. Families huddled in shelters, the sounds of gunfire echoing through the streets, soldiers on the front lines battling not just for land, but for life. The young nation must fight not only against external enemies, but also against the internally divided forces that question how to build a future from the ashes of a long history of exile. Yet despite all the challenges, Israel refuses to give up, determined to establish a sanctuary for the Jewish people. The land, so long a symbol of hope, now becomes the center of a fierce struggle for survival. As the war rages on, the heart of the story becomes clear. It is not just a battle for land. It is a battle for identity, for a place where a people can call home. This fight is personal for every soldier, every citizen, every family. It is about preserving their right to live as Jews in their ancestral homeland without the constant fear of persecution. The battlefront becomes a space where individuals are pushed to their limits, yet the spirit of the Jewish people remains unyielding. Amidst the chaos, there are moments of unity. The diverse backgrounds of Israel's citizens, from Holocaust survivors to immigrants from all over the world, come together in the face of a common enemy. They fight not just for survival, but for a shared vision of a peaceful, thriving homeland. In the trenches, in the makeshift hospitals, and in the refugee camps, the strength of community emerges as Israel's greatest weapon. Feel the grit and resilience of this moment as each battle, each victory state closer to securing its place on the world stage. The war takes its toll, but with every passing day, Israel begins to see victory, not just in military terms, but in its survival as a nation. By 1949, the armistice agreements with Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria set the stage for the foundation of the modern Israeli state. Through this hardship, the people of Israel prove that their spirit cannot be broken. Despite the overwhelming challenges and the sacrifices made along the way, Israel stands strong. The birth of a nation is never easy, and this struggle for independence will shape the future of Israel for decades to come. The nation that rises from the rubble is not just built with weapons, but with the collective dreams, hopes, and sacrifices of its people. As the dust settles, the land of Israel is no longer just a dream. It is a living, breathing nation, full of life, resilience, and potential. The story of its birth is a testament to the enduring power of hope, and it marks the beginning of a new chapter for the Jewish people. They have not just survived, they have created a future. And as you feel the weight of this moment, you realize that the story of Israel is far from over. It is only just beginning with the Declaration of Independence. The newly formed state of Israel stands on a fragile ground. The euphoria of victory in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War quickly fades into the reality of the immense challenges that lie ahead. Israel must now transition from a nation forged through conflict into one that can build a sustainable future for its people. The land that had been promised is not free from the struggle. Instead, it requires the strength, determination, and unity of its people to turn it into a thriving nation. Feel the weight of the task ahead as the people of Israel begin to build their new home from scratch. There are many obstacles to overcome. The country is still facing external threats, economic instability, and internal political disagreements. With a diverse population, including Jewish immigrants from all over the world, tensions arise as different cultures and ideologies converge. Yet, despite the challenges, the commitment to survival and progress remains steadfast. This is not just a political project. It is a vision, a dream shared by those who have longed for a homeland where they can live in peace and security. Israel's leaders, including David Ben-Gurion, face the impossible task of not only establishing the nation's political and economic infrastructure, but also fostering a sense of identity that unites the diverse population. The young country must prove its legitimacy on the world stage, but it also has to address the growing tensions with its Arab neighbors. Tensions that threaten the fragile peace that had been established. Every day is a struggle, but every step forward feels like a small victory. Feel the ambition and drive of the Israeli people as they rise to meet these challenges. The country's founding ideals are tested, yet its people continue to persevere. The kibbutzim, or collective farms, are a symbol of the cooperative spirit that pervades Israel's society. These self-sustaining communities represent a sacrifice and commitment to the land, countries come together to cultivate the earth and build the nation's economic base. At the same time, infrastructure begins to take shape. Roads, hospitals, and schools are built from the ground up. But even more crucially, Israel must create a national identity rooted in both its Jewish heritage and the modern world. The tension between tradition and progress is felt by every citizen as they look to the future while honoring the history of their ancestors. As Israel begins to assert itself as a new nation on the world stage, it faces the monumental task securing its survival. The constant threat of attack from surrounding Arab states is real, and the young nation must rely on both military strength and diplomacy to protect itself. Yet, Israel also begins to reach out to the world beyond its borders. The newly formed nation seeks recognition, but it is a struggle to gain legitimacy in a global community that remains skeptical of its existence. Feel the tension between Israel's outward quest for international recognition and its inward need for solidarity and unity. The road to peace is long and filled with obstacles, but Israel's resilience is unwavering. Through the struggle, Israel starts to emerge, not just as a military power, but as a symbol of hope for Jews around the world. Asterisk, the country's first years are a time of sowing seeds, both literally and metaphorically. As you continue to walk alongside Israel's founders and settlers, you feel the passion and determination they have for their nation. They are not merely fighting for survival, they are fighting for the future, for a life where their children can grow up free from persecution. Israel's people are committed to the land, to each other, and to the dream of a peaceful and prosperous future. As the years unfold, Israel's early struggles begin to bear fruit. The world begins to recognize its place in the community of nations. Peaceful moments come amidst the chaos of the external conflicts, and the strength of Israel's citizens builds the foundation for the future. The story of Israel is not just one of survival, but one of creation, of turning the dream into reality, brick by brick, farm by farm, and sacrifice by sacrifice, with the foundation of the new state in place. The citizens of Israel face an even greater challenge than ever before, the task of sustaining their newfound independence amidst growing tensions, both internally and externally. The success of the nascent state is never guaranteed, and each victory is matched by an equally significant trial. The struggle is no longer just for survival. It is about proving to the world that Israel can thrive as a sovereign nation despite the unrelenting obstacles in its path. Feel the weight of the years following Israel's independence. Each day, a battle against forces that wish to see it fail. The country remains surrounded by hostile neighbors, and despite the ceasefires and armistices, there is a constant undercurrent of tension. Israel must navigate a precarious political landscape, both within its own borders and across the international stage. The Arab-Israeli conflict remains unresolved, and the presence of Palestinian refugees situation, leading to violent uprisings and further political complexities. In this chapter, Israel's resolve is tested by a new series of challenges. The military must continually prepare for potential attacks from surrounding Arab nations, and every major border skirmish is seen as a threat to the very existence of the state. Yet, Israel's military capabilities continue to improve, and the nation builds its strength through alliances with global powers. Notably, the United States feel the rising tension as Israel's leaders balance the demands of defense with the desire for peace. In the midst of external pressures, there are those who advocate for a different path, one of reconciliation with neighboring countries, seeking a peaceful resolution to the ongoing conflict. But others are more militant, pushing for a hardline approach. The political divide in Israel deepens as the right-wing and left-wing factions clash over the future of the nation. As you step deeper into Israel's development, you witness transformative period when the country moves from survival mode to a nation-building effort. You see the blossoming of Israel's economy and infrastructure as Jewish immigrants from all over the world, from Eastern Europe, Russia, and the Middle East, bring with them skills, resources, and ambitions to contribute to the growth of the country. The kibbutzim, once symbols of communal sacrifice and self-sufficiency, evolve into powerful contributors to Israel's agriculture, industry, and culture. This chapter also brings attention to the cultural development that emerges. In Israel, despite the war-torn landscape, the arts, education, and national identity begin to flourish. Israeli writers, artists, musicians, and philosophers contribute to the shaping of a vibrant cultural scene, helping Israel define what it means to be a Jewish state in the modern world. Feel the determination of the people as they work tirelessly to build a future where their children can live in peace and prosperity. Each success, whether it's a thriving high-tech industry or a newly built school, is a testament to their perseverance. But with each victory comes a challenge. Israel must navigate the waters of international politics as countries like the Soviet Union, Egypt, and Jordan continue to engage in diplomatic and military maneuvers that threaten Israel's stability. Through it all, Israel's people persist. There is a deep understanding that the nation's future depends on more than just defense. It depends on the unity of the people, the ability to put aside internal divisions, and the collective will to create a society that can withstand the storms of history. The challenges they face only strengthen their resolve to carve out a future in the land of their ancestors. As this chapter concludes, Israel has not only survived, but begun to thrive, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. Yet, the road ahead remains uncertain. The peace that so many long for is still far from reach, and tensions within and beyond its borders continue to simmer. But Israel's spirit is unbroken, and its people, bound by a deep sense of purpose, continue to press forward. With each step, they shift its focus from military survival to seeking the lasting peace. But peace does not come easily, for the scars of war run deep, and trust is in short supply. The Arab-Israeli conflict, rooted in historical disputes over land, religion, and identity, continues to weigh heavily on Israel's future. The international community, meanwhile, remains divided, with some countries advocating for a peaceful resolution, while others stand firmly in opposition to Israel's existence. In this delicate moment of transition, Israel's leaders must walk a fine line, continuing to build a strong defense, while also seeking a diplomatic resolution to the ongoing crisis. Feel the pressure mounting on Israel's leaders, particularly Prime Minister Menachem, Begin, and Anwar Sadat of Egypt, who, in the late 1970s, embark on the Camp David Accords, a bold initiative that promises to end decades of bloodshed. The Accords represent a historic step forward, marking the first time that an Arab country would officially recognize Israel. But the road to peace is filled with compromise, sacrifice, and a constant fear that any gesture towards peace might trigger internal resistance or hostility. Feel the tension of the negotiations as these two leaders, who represent countries long at warset across from each other, pushing for a solution that would forever alter the course of history. Israel's security, the sovereignty of Egypt, and the broader future of the Middle East hang in the balance. Each word, each decision made in the rooms of Camp David carries the weight of thousands of lives. The delicate dance of diplomacy is not only between nations, but also within Israel's own borders. There are voices calling for peace and others for retaliation, leading to a political divide within Israel itself. The settlement movement grows stronger in the wake of peace talks, with some Israelis seeing the idea of ceding land as a betrayal of the promise to the Jewish people. This internal conflict represents the heart of Israel's struggles balancing the desire for peace with the pressure of maintaining its territorial integrity and identity. Despite the turmoil, the Camp David Accords are signed in 1979, leading to a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. This breakthrough opens the door to the possibility of reconciliation, but peace with Egypt is only one step on a longer journey. Israel now faces the challenge of engaging with other Arab nations, all while navigating the complex and volatile relationship with the Palestinian people, whose aspirations for their own state remain unfulfilled. The Israeli-Palestinian issue remains a constant point of tension. In this chapter, you will also feel the growing frustration and sense of injustice felt by many Palestinians who are caught between Israel's territorial expansions and their own struggles for self-determination. The emergence of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, led by Yasser Arafat, underscores the increasing calls for Palestinian rights and the end of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. Feel the weight of this unresolved conflict, where every peace initiative seems to lead to further division. Despite the success of the Camp David Accords, peace with the Palestinians remains as a grim reminder that the desire for peace on both sides has not yet overcome the deep historical, political, and emotional rifts that divide them. Despite these challenges, the Camp David Accords remain a testament to the potential for peace in the region. Israel's willingness to negotiate with Egypt shows the world that diplomacy is possible, even in the face of intense conflict. However, this peace is fragile, and as history progresses, new conflicts arise, new alliances form, and the hope for a lasting peace continues to hang in the balance. Feel the sense of possibility amid the challenges, as Israel's quest for peace is far from over. There are still many steps to be taken, many conversations to be had, and many voices to be heard. The road to peace is long and winding, but Israel's leaders, bolstered by their successes, continue their journey, striving for a future where all peoples of the region can live in peace, despite the difficulties that lie ahead. In the aftermath of the Camp David Accords, Israel's path toward peace is met with mixed emotions. While the peace treaty with Egypt represents a monumental success, the rest of the Middle East remains hesitant, and Israel's relationship with the Palestinians remains as contentious as ever. The optimism that followed the signing of the Accords quickly fades as new challenges arise, testing the very foundations of peace. In the early 1980s and beyond, the hope for a comprehensive resolution gives way to frustration as violence erupts in the territories, and international negotiations stall that feel the weight of the uncertainty that grips Israel's leadership as it faces constant pressure on multiple fronts. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict escalates, and Israel finds itself caught between the desire to protect its citizens and the need to engage in meaningful diplomacy. The first Intifada, the Palestinian uprising that begins in 1987, marks a critical turning point, bringing violence to the streets and further entrenching the animosity between Israelis and Palestinians. The clash between hope and despair grows stronger as the search for peace seems to recede into the distance. Asterisk, amid this turmoil, Israel's domestic politics also undergoes significant changes. There are those within the country who demand stronger military action, while others call for a greater emphasis on diplomacy. The political divide becomes evident as Shimon Peres and Yitzhak Rabin, two prominent Israeli figures, take steps toward negotiating with the Palestinians. Yet these efforts are often met with skepticism, both within Israel and across the region. The emotional toll on the people of Israel is undeniable, and their hearts remain torn between their security and the desire for lasting peace. Despite these setbacks, hope emerges once again in the 1990s when the Oslo Accords are signed in 1993. This agreement marks the first time in history that Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, formally agree to recognize each other's existence and engage in a political process toward peace. sense of optimism is palpable as Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat shake hands on the White House lawn, symbolizing a tentative but significant step toward a future of coexistence. The world watches, hoping that this moment will mark the beginning of a lasting peace. However, even as peace negotiations unfold, challenges remain. The Oslo Accords lay the groundwork for future peace, but the process is fraught with difficulties. There are factions within Israel that oppose any territorial concessions, and similarly, there are Palestinian groups that reject negotiations. The Second Intifada erupts in the early 2000s, devastating both sides and leading to a period of heightened violence and broken promises. Asterisk, despite the collapse of the Oslo peace process, the underlying desire for peace does not fade. Feel the weight of these ongoing struggles as Israel's leaders, like Ehud Barak and Ariel Sharon, continue to grapple with the complexities of security, territory, and national identity. Israel is caught between its desire for peace with its neighbors and the continued threats posed by militant groups and hostile neighbors. The 2000s see new efforts to revitalize the peace process, with leaders like Ehud Olmert and Benjamin Netanyahu at the forefront. International initiatives continue, and though they do not bring about immediate peace, they keep the dialogue alive. The growing power of the settlement movement on Israeli land, alongside continued acts of violence and political stalemates, further complicates matters. Yet, the ever-present yearning for a better future remains in the hearts of many on both sides. In this chapter, feel the tension between optimism and frustration, the hope for peace against the backdrop of continued violence and distrust. The peace process remains a work in progress as Israel and Palestine continue to navigate their way through a complex web of historical baggage, political divisions, and human emotion. Every step forward is met with resistance, yet the pursuit of peace endures a reminder that even amidst the harshest struggles, the dream of coexistence never truly fades. The road to peace is long, uncertain, and fraught with setbacks, but Israel, like the people it was built to serve, remains resilient. Through war, negotiation, and unrest, Israel continues to forge its path, knowing that, while the journey may be difficult, the pursuit of peace remains one of its greatest aspirations. As the years roll on, Israel finds itself facing a constantly shifting geopolitical landscape, with the Oslo Accords fading into history and the peace process stalling. A new sense of urgency emerges. The dream of lasting peace with the Palestinians remains an elusive goal, and Israel's internal conflicts continue to strain its progress. Yet, amidst the tumult, new alliances begin to take shape, shifting the region's dynamics and providing new opportunities for peace and security. Feel the hopeful tension in the air as Israel turns its focus beyond its immediate neighbors. By the mid-2000s, diplomatic breakthroughs occur Accords represent a shift in the region where the focus on the Palestinian conflict begins to be overshadowed by a shared concern over security, particularly in relation to Iran's growing influence in the Middle East. For the first time in decades, Israel feels the warmth of cooperation with Arab nations. The UAE and Bahrain's recognition of Israel signals the beginning of a new era in Israeli-Arab relations. Feel the optimism as new trade routes, diplomatic dialogues, and cultural exchanges flourish. Israel is no longer isolated in the region. It is a part of a wider Middle Eastern framework, one built on mutual interests, such as the fight against extremism and the desire for economic prosperity. However, this new diplomatic reality does not come without its challenges. The Palestinian issue still looms large, and many Arabs view the normalization of ties with Israel as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause. The Israeli settlements in the West Bank continue to be a contentious issue, stoking the flames of division, both within the region and globally. Tensions between Israel and the Palestinians remain, with sporadic violence and political stalemates persisting. As Israel embraces new alliances, the need to find a lasting resolution to the Palestinian conflict becomes even more urgent. Feel the shift in the international atmosphere. While the Abraham Accords are hailed as a diplomatic success, they also highlight the growing disconnect between Israel and the Palestinians. The global community is divided. Some view the agreements as a necessary step toward peace, while others see them as an abandonment of the Palestinian people. Israel must balance its new relationships with the UAE and Bahrain while addressing the long-standing grievances of the Palestinians. A task that requires delicate diplomacy and a deep understanding of both regional and internal dynamics. As you continue through this chapter, feel the complexity of Israel's position. It is a nation caught between the past and the future, between the hope of a broader Middle Eastern peace and the unresolved conflict that continues to shadow its every move. Israel has made strides in its relationship with Arab nations, but the path toward full regional peace remains elusive. The Palestinian cause remains a painful reminder that true peace is not simply about diplomatic agreements, but about the hearts and minds of the people who live through the conflict every day. This chapter is not just about the success of new alliances, but about the realization that peace cannot be achieved by simply ignoring the voices of those left behind. The Palestinians are still waiting for their own justice, their own peace, and their own place in the future of the Middle East. While Israel celebrates its growing ties with the UAE and Bahrain, it's clear that the struggle for true peace that includes both Israelis and Palestinians, has not yet been realized. Feel the underlying tension between progress and frustration as the promise of peace continues to remain just out of reach, despite the diplomatic breakthroughs. The journey toward It requires a willingness to confront the hard truths of history and build a future where both Israelis and Palestinians can live in harmony. Israel's path forward is marked by resilience, but also by the recognition that true peace will require continued efforts, sacrifices, and a deep commitment to the idea that unity is possible, even amidst the deepest divides. As the years pass, Israel finds itself at a crossroads. The Abraham Accords have opened new doors for Israel in the Arab world, but the path toward a shared, peaceful future remains fraught with challenges. The optimism that emerged from diplomatic breakthroughs is tempered by the ongoing Palestinian issue, which continues to dominate the political discourse within Israel and beyond. The country has reached a significant milestone, but true coexistence remains an elusive goal. Feel the weight of these struggles as Israel, despite its new alliances, is confronted by the ever-present divide between its citizens and its neighbors. Palestinian leaders, still entrenched in their fight for sovereignty, demand justice and recognition. The cycles of violence between Israelis and Palestinians persist, creating an environment where the dream of peace seems just out of reach. Every step forward is met with resistance, and every gesture of goodwill is challenged by the harsh reality of displacement, discrimination, and mistrust. The internal division within Israel becomes more pronounced. The settlement movement grows stronger, and the right-wing political factions demand a tougher stance on security, while peace advocates within Israel push for a solution to the Palestinian question. The left and right become ever more polarized, their clash of ideologies shaping the future direction of the nation. The country's political landscape becomes a microcosm of the broader Middle Eastern struggle, where compromise seems impossible and progress is slow and hard-earned. As you journey deeper into this part of Israel's story, feel the conflicting emotions that sweep through the nation. Israelis experience a deep sense of pride in the country's accomplishments, but they also carry the heavy burden of guilt and confusion over their relationships with the Palestinians. The dream of a peaceful future, once so clear, now seems clouded by doubt. The historical wounds of the Holocaust, the exodus from Arab lands, and the decades of war weigh heavily on their hearts, creating a complex mosaic of fear, hope, and uncertainty. Asterisk. Yet, even amid these struggles, a new sense of hope begins to emerge. The growing recognition within Israel that the future of the country is intrinsically linked to the fate of the Palestinians gives birth to new ideas and new initiatives for peace. Some of Israel's leaders, like Yad, Barak, and Shimon Peres, continue to advocate for a two-state solution, believing that the path to peace lies in a shared future built on compromise and cooperation. They know that only by acknowledging the rights of the Palestinian people can Israel truly ensure its own security and long-term survival. Feel the gradual shift in the collective mindset as Israel grapples with these difficult questions. Peace. Efforts continue, even though the process is slow and filled with setbacks. Despite the the ongoing tensions, new generations of Israelis and Palestinians begin to explore the possibility of coexisting. Dialogue, not just between governments, but also between citizens, begins to take hold. Grassroots movements emerge, where ordinary people on both sides of the conflict begin to understand that peace will only be possible if they learn to see each other not as enemies, but as neighbors with shared hopes for a better future. The complexity of this moment in history is palpable. Israel's future is no longer just about military might or diplomatic victories, but about the willingness to embrace compromise. The younger generations, many of whom grew up in a world defined by conflict, now face the monumental task of forging a new path forward. But the road to peace is filled with obstacles. The voices of extremism on both sides continue to shout the loudest, drowning out those who long for peaceful coexistence. This chapter ends with the realization that while Israel has made tremendous strides in securing its place in the world, the battle for peace is far from over. The journey is long and filled with uncertainty, but there is hope. Hope that through continued dialogue, understanding, and shared sacrifice, Israel and Palestine can one day build the peaceful future they both deserve. In the meantime, Israel continues to grow, to evolve, and to face the challenges that come with its place in the world. It stands at the crossroads of history, where every step forward is a choice between conflict and cooperation. And while the future remains uncertain, the promise of peace still beckons. A distant yet ever-present hope that one day all the people of the Holy Land will live side by side, united in peace and prosperity. As the years unfold, Israel continues to evolve, but the path to peace remains challenging. With the weight of history still pressing heavily on the nation, despite the diplomatic successes achieved through the Abraham Accords, the deep divisions between Israelis and Palestinians persist, and the journey toward a lasting resolution feels as elusive as ever. The wounds of the past, marked by years of conflict and distrust, are not easily healed, yet the hope for a better future for both peoples persists. Whispering from the corners of every conversation, every political discussion, and every personal dream for tomorrow. In this chapter, the focus shifts to the younger generation, those who have known nothing but conflict and whose lives have been shaped by the tensions of the past. Feel the quiet determination of these young Israelis and Palestinians who yearn not for the politics of their elders, but for a new world. A world where they can coexist without the constant fear of war, violence, and oppression. For them, the peace their parents dreamed of is no longer just an abstract idea, but a tangible goal that can be reached. This chapter introduces new efforts in both Israel and Palestine to foster dialogue and understanding. Grassroots initiatives, led by young activists, scholars, and community leaders, aim to bridge the divide between the two peoples. You feel the quiet optimism that blooms in these efforts. Small Israelis and Palestinians come together in dialogue, in shared spaces, and even in shared labor to build a future that acknowledges their mutual humanity. These young people are driven not by a need for vengeance or restitution, but by a desire to see their children grow up in a world where they are not defined by the mistakes of the past. While these efforts face immense opposition, they also face incredible success, proving that when people are allowed to speak freely and openly about their hopes and fears, the power of human connection transcends national, ethnic, and political divides. Whether it's through collaborative art projects, peace-building workshops, or cross-border sports exchanges, Israelis and Palestinians discover that their shared humanity is far greater than their shared conflict. In these spaces of cooperation, you witness the birth of a new dream one, where peace is possible, not through grand political deals, but through the quiet work of everyday people who are willing to see the other as a brother, as a sister, feel the subtle change in the air. As these young activists continue to challenge the status quo, calling for both reform and reconciliation, Israel, while continuing to defend itself and protect its borders, begins to shift its focus from military solutions to social and cultural ones. The peace movement inside Israel grows stronger, and the narrative begins to change from one of security at all costs to one of shared responsibility. This transformation is slow but steady, as more and more Israelis come to understand that true security can only be achieved through peace, not just with their neighbors, but within their own society. Palestinians, too, begin to see the possibility of a new life, one that no longer demands a zero-sum resolution to the conflict. The two-state solution is still part of the conversation, but a growing number of Palestinians begin to entertain the idea of coexistence, where their identity as a people is respected, where their lands are acknowledged, and where they are not simply living in a state of perpetual struggle. For these young Palestinians, the dream is no longer solely about sovereignty, but also about peaceful coexistence, where their future generations can live freely and without the chains of history, binding them to a cycle of violence. In this chapter, you feel the hopeful pulse of a generation that believes in something greater than their individual struggles. It is a belief in unity, not as a political slogan, but as a deeply felt conviction. As these young Israelis and Palestinians continue their work, they realize that their efforts are not about finding a quick solution to the conflict. Instead, it is about slowly, gradually changing the cultural narrative that for decades has been dominated by war, fear, and resentment. Feel the quiet strength in their collective efforts as these movements for peace begin to shape the future, one small action at a time. Though it may take years, even decades, the promise of a shared future is no longer an impossible dream. It is something that is being built right now by the people who believe that change is possible, that healing is not just an ideal, but a reality waiting to be embraced. And as you stand beside them, you realize that this chapter is not just about politics or diplomacy. It is about humanity, about the power of empathy, compassion, and the willingness to change. It is the story of how people who have been divided by history and politics can find common ground, and how, through shared understanding and cooperation, a peaceful future can emerge. This chapter, though filled with challenges, is filled with hope, the kind of hope that can only come when people are brave enough to imagine a better world and are willing to work toward it, one small step at a time. As the years pass, the delicate peace-building efforts between Israelis and Palestinians begin to mature, yet the complexities of the Middle East persist. The road to true peace remains full of obstacles, both external and internal, as political divisions grow and generational conflicts shape the discourse. Israel continues to grapple with its identity in a rapidly changing world. The question of whether it will be able to achieve peace with its neighbors without compromising its core values and national security remains unanswered. And the tension between national security and human rights becomes a defining issue. Feel the heaviness in the air as the balance between maintaining a secure state and forging meaningful peace becomes ever more fragile. With each passing year, the Palestinian territories become more fragmented, with different factions holding differing views on the path forward. While some factions continue to fight for sovereignty, others, weary of the endless cycle of violence, begin to advocate for reconciliation and coexistence. Within Israel, settlers, military leaders, and peace activists clash over the future of the West Bank and Gaza. Political instability continues to challenge the idea of a lasting peace. In this chapter, you feel the unease of Israel's leadership as they wrestle with how to balance international pressure for peace with the demands of security. New voices begin to rise within Israel's government, calling for more radical solutions. Some propose a one-state solution, where Israelis and Palestinians would live together, while others demand the status quo be maintained for the sake of national security. The Israeli-Palestinian issue remains at the forefront of political debate, and no resolution seems to offer a clear path forward. Asterisk, despite the mounting challenges, there are moments of light. Grassroots movements continue to flourish, bringing together individuals who believe in the possibility of a peaceful coexistence. Youth from both sides of the conflict come together in informal settings, sports, art, and education, and discover shared experiences that help build bridges of understanding. Their voices grow louder, and there is hope that the next generation of Israelis and Palestinians will forge a new future, untethered by the painful legacy of past violence. Will feel the urgency as Israel faces the reality that diplomacy alone will not bring peace. It will take the will of the people, those who have lived through the violence and suffering, to bring about a change in the mindset that has long divided them. The revolution of thought begins in the hearts of those who dare to dream beyond the walls of their past Palestinian society seek a new approach, one that acknowledges the need for dignity, justice, and peace without the bitterness of past grievances overshadowing the future. This evolving perspective, while fraught with tension, represents a shift in how peace might be achieved, not through violence, but through a long, difficult process of mutual respect and reconciliation. Meanwhile, within Israel, the Jewish diaspora continues to engage in the conversations, with Jews around the world contributing to the peace process through diplomacy and advocacy. They voice their concern for the future of Israel, hoping that peace can be achieved while maintaining the core values of Jewish identity as security, self-determination, and prosperity. But they also recognize that a lasting peace must involve the recognition and respect of Palestinian identity and aspirations. The tension between Israel's Jewish identity and its future in a multicultural Middle East remains at the heart of these debates. As Israel stands at this pivotal moment in its history, the road ahead is unclear, but there is a growing realization that real peace will require sacrifice on both sides. It is not enough for Israel to protect its borders. It must also find a way to protect the dignity and rights of the Palestinians. The future of Israel and of the Middle East depends not on military might or diplomatic agreements, but on the ability of its people to embrace a new vision, one that goes beyond division and toward the possibility of shared future. This chapter ends with a sense of uncertainty, but also a growing determination. The next steps are unclear, but the journey toward peace is no longer just a political goal. It is a human endeavor, driven by the desire for a better life for all the people in the region. There is hope that one day Israel and Palestine can walk side by side, not as enemies, but as neighbors, bound by a common desire to live in peace and prosperity. The future remains uncertain, but the journey of reconciliation, though long and difficult, has already begun. The road to peace is not linear, and the challenges Israel faces continue to grow as the complexities of regional and internal politics evolve. The dream of a lasting peace still feels elusive, but there is now a subtle shift in the air. For the first time, the possibilities for a shared future are being discussed openly, not just by political leaders, but by ordinary citizens from both Israel and Palestine. Though tensions still run high, this moment marks a crucial turning point in the ongoing struggle. As more people begin to believe that peace is not just a distant ideal, but a tangible goal that can be achieved, feel the quiet determination of Israelis and Palestinians alike, as both sides start to recognize the painful reality: true peace cannot be achieved without sacrifice and reconciliation. This chapter introduces a new phase of Israel's story, one in which the emotional and psychological barriers that have divided the two peoples for generations begin to break down. The wounds of history run deep, but it is through understanding and shared dialogue that healing can begin. At the heart of this effort is the growing recognition that coexistence will require more than just political agreements or military solutions. It requires a deep, fundamental change in the way both sides view each other. Feel the weight of this transformation as Israelis begin to understand that their security is not just about military strength, but about creating an environment where Palestinians feel heard, respected, and able to live in peace. Likewise, Palestinians begin to see that Israel's security is tied to its right to exist, and that achieving their own freedom does not mean denying Israel's right to be a Jewish state. The shift in thinking takes time, but there are signs of change. Israeli and Palestinian youth, many of whom have grown up in a world of conflict, begin to meet each other, to talk, to understand each other's stories. Through education, arts, and cultural exchange programs, the next generation starts to build the bridges that their parents could not. They refuse to be bound by the mistakes of the past, and instead they turn their attention to the future, where they hope to find a new way to live together. But there are still deep divisions within both Israeli and Palestinian societies. On the Israeli side, the political right wing continues to call for hardline policies, advocating for the continued expansion of settlements and a tough stance on security. Meanwhile, Palestinian groups like Hamas continue to oppose any form of compromise, preferring armed resistance over negotiation. These internal struggles, while often overshadowed by the larger political issues, still pose significant challenges to the broader peace process. As you move through this chapter, you feel the emotional weight of these opposing forces. The longing for peace is there, but it is met with the realities of fear, mistrust, and historical trauma. The echoes of past wars reverberate through every conversation, every diplomatic gesture. The shadow of violence lingers in the background, threatening to overshadow the fragile steps toward reconciliation. Feel the intense hope mixed with doubt as new leaders emerge in both Israel and Palestine. Individuals who understand that the way forward will require bold, visionary leadership. These leaders work tirelessly, not just at the political level, but on the grassroots level, where the most profound change can occur. They reach out to communities that have long been divided, helping to build the emotional bridges that will support the political ones. Peace becomes a collective effort, one in which all must participate, even those who have suffered the most. This chapter concludes with a sense of cautious optimism, but the road ahead remains uncertain. The story of Israel and Palestine is one that is still being written. And while peace is not yet achieved, the hope for a future built on mutual understanding is now a guiding light. The journey is far from over, but progress has been made. And for the first time in decades, the dream of a shared future seems a little closer. The story of Israel's creation is no longer just one of conflict, but of healing, growth, and the possibility of peace if only both peoples can continue to work together toward that dream. The path to peace is never straightforward, but it is a path that Israel and Palestine must walk together. As the winds of change continue to blow across the region, the promise of a new beginning lingers on the horizon. The story of Israel's journey is far from complete. While peace remains an ideal that Israel and Palestine have yet to fully realize, the efforts to build a shared future continue to evolve. Diplomatic efforts shift toward deeper regional cooperation, and new dialogues are fostered, not just between leaders, but among the people themselves. Amidst this backdrop of uncertainty, one thing becomes increasingly clear: the future of both Israel and Palestine is inextricably tied to their ability to bridge divides and embrace one another's humanity. Feel the quiet optimism that begins to grow as civil society movements emerge on both sides, driven by individuals who have lived through years of conflict and violence, but now yearn for a different kind of future. The belief in coexistence, once the most impossible dreams, now taking root in communities that were once bitter enemies. These grassroots efforts represent the most profound hope of all ordinary people from all walks of life, standing together and saying enough is enough. The focus shifts to interpersonal relationships as Israelis and Palestinians begin to meet each other not as enemies, but as neighbors, as one bearing the weight of their own history, yet each one sharing the same land, the same struggles, and the same dreams. These interactions, whether through joint educational programs, shared cultural events, or community initiatives, become the bedrock of a new kind of peace, one not forged by governments alone, but by the people themselves. The power of these small acts of human connection is undeniable. The youth of both Israel and Palestine begin to take center stage in these movements for change. They were born into a world defined by war and division, but they refuse to accept that as their future. Through education, the internet, and social media, connect with each other across borders, slowly beginning to peel away the stereotypes, fears, and prejudices that have defined their parents' generation. These young people demand a world where they are not defined by their ethnicity, religion, or nationality, but by their shared humanity. But while these efforts offer hope, the journey toward full peace is still a long and painstaking one. On the Israeli side, the settlement issue continues to stir tensions, with many Israelis arguing for the expansion of settlements in the West Bank and others calling for an end to occupations. On the Palestinian side, divisions between Fatah and Hamas complicate efforts to establish a unified stance on peace. The political landscape remains fractured, and each new conflict or incident reignites old fears and frustrations. Feel the frustration that lingers in the air as these divisions persist. The heart of the conflict remains deeply entrenched in territorial disputes, historical grievances, and political through so much pain are the ones who push for change, asking their leaders to put aside political games for the sake of peace. Their demand is simple: enough fighting, enough suffering. They are ready to move beyond the pain of the past. Asterisk. Israel's government, though still cautious, begins to realize that the path to a stable future lies not just in security measures, but in acknowledging Palestinian rights and finding a way to peacefully coexist. While the two-state solution remains the primary goal for many, there is a growing recognition that peace will require more than just political settlements. Sit will require a fundamental shift in mindset on both sides. Israel's future security depends on the realization that peace is not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice, equity, and mutual respect. Feel the slow yet undeniable shift as Israeli leadership begins to embrace more inclusive strategies. The Israeli peace camp, once marginalized, grows in influence as leaders like Ehud Barak and Tzipi Livni continue to advocate for new avenues of peace talks, including broader international involvement and deeper collaboration with Palestinian leaders who recognize the urgency of reaching a solution. It's a fragile yet meaningful step toward shared stability. Palestinians to begin to see signs of change. The younger generation in Palestine, though, still fighting for their freedom, are increasingly vocal about nonviolent resistance, seeking justice not through war, but through diplomatic means. They realize that their fight is not just for a piece of land, but for dignity, self-determination, and the right to live peacefully within their own borders. This chapter concludes with a sense of quiet determination. Though the road to peace remains uncertain, there is a growing consensus among the people that they are ready for a new chapter. The dream of coexistence, though still far from fully realized, is no longer an impossible one. There is hope, a quiet but firm hope, that if they continue to work together, step by step, Israel and Palestine can build a peaceful future that is rooted not in conflict, but in shared human dignity and respect for one another. The struggle continues, but this time there is a new sense of possibility, future, where peace is not just a dream, but a reality waiting to unfold. As the decades unfold, the trajectory of Israel's story takes on new dimensions, not simply shaped by the challenges of the past, but by the collective resolve of a nation that refuses to be defined by its struggles alone. With each passing year, a quiet revolution begins to emerge, not in the form of military victories or grand political gestures, but in the hearts and minds of ordinary citizens from both Israel and Palestine. The journey toward peace, which has spanned generations, reaches its most significant turning point. The vision of two peoples, so long separated by walls of fear and distrust, begins to shift toward one of mutual respect, recognition, collaboration. Feel the gradual transformation as the old narratives of division and hatred slowly fade into the background. Israelis and Palestinians once bound by cycles of violence, now find themselves working side by side in ways previously unimaginable. At this pivotal moment, the realization dawns that peace is not simply the absence of war, it is the presence of justice, equality, and shared prosperity. It is a collective decision to embrace a future with optimism, courage, and the understanding that the path ahead will not be without hardship, but that the promise of peace is worth every effort. In this chapter, Israel and Palestine, with the support of the global community, come together not as adversaries, but as partners in progress. International involvement, once seen as an external pressure, becomes a powerful force that supports the desires of both peoples to build a future where coexistence is not just an ideal, but a daily reality. Diplomatic agreements continue to be negotiated, but now there is a new energy born not from the fear of violence, but from the excitement of new possibilities. Borders, once fortified with walls of hatred and suspicion, begin to open up, fostering economic collaboration, cultural exchanges, and the movement of people across regions, free from the barriers that have defined their lives for so long. Feel the lightness in the air as the youth of Israel and Palestine grow up in a world unburdened by the hatred and fear that once defined their parents' lives. These young people, who have inherited the dreams of their ancestors, now have the opportunity to shape their futures, not by the constraints of history, but by the possibilities of a new tomorrow. Education, shared resources, and technology become the foundations of a new society, one where cooperation and innovation replace the long-standing divisions. In this new era, both Israel and Palestine embrace their shared humanity, no longer defined by their conflict. Both nations begin to see each other through the lens of common interests, the understanding that they are both responsible for creating a peaceful future for the next generations. Israel's borders, once a symbol of separation, now represent a shared space where people of different backgrounds, religions, and histories live side by side. Palestinians regain the dignity and sovereignty they have long fought for, not through conflict, but through dialogue, mutual respect, and peaceful governance. Feel the weight of history lifting as Israel and Palestine enter a new phase of shared responsibility. The story of Israel, which began in the fires of conflict, now becomes one of unity and hope. The peace process is no longer a fragile hope, but a sustainable reality, rooted in the actions of both peoples who choose to build the future together, rather than perpetuating the cycle of violence. It is a testament to the power of forgiveness, compassion, and vision. The chapter closes with a quiet but profound realization. The dream of a peaceful future was not born out of any one diplomatic breakthrough, but out of the collective commitment of all who dared to hope, who dared to dream of a world where walls are broken and hearts healed. The road was long, the pain deep, and the sacrifices many. But now, Israel and Palestine, together with the world, look to a future filled with lessons of the past guide the path forward, and the enduring vision of peace shines brightly. This is the story of how Israel, a nation born from struggle, emerges into a new year one, where the dream of peace is no longer just a possibility, but a reality that reflects the unity, resilience, and shared vision of all those who walked this difficult but ultimately transformative path. The future is open, the horizon is clear, and the promise of a peaceful world lies ahead, waiting for the next chapter to be written. Asterisk.